just don't see it any other way. I'm too weak to make the climb. I need a miracle this time. That's when.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC Radio in the town of Geraldine, Alabama. You know, a lot of folks, Ginny, are finding out about Geraldine, Alabama all over the web because we are also located on Abundant TV, which is on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire, and we're still on locally in North Alabama, and that's channel 182 on Charter Communications. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, as we get to ride home with you in the afternoon. It's really awesome. And thank you again so much for telling your friends about it as well. You know, this is it's been a really, really good week, and gardens are coming in. People are sending me pictures of their gardens. And I've got Ginny Schaefer with me right now. She's House Representative, and she's in our district, and we're proud of that as well. DeKalb County, where all are you?
Well, the new district lines do not become effective until after the election in November, on November the 8th. But I currently have Collinsville to Dogtown, all of Cherokee County, part of Calhoun and Cleburne, but District 39 is losing Calhoun and Cleburne, but I'm gaining more of DeKalb County, so it's a good thing overall. And I hate to be losing folks I've worked hard with, but looking forward to having more of DeKalb County because we're neighbors and friends, and so I'm excited and happy about it, and already working, even though it's not official. I'm already working in the new area. And see, part of District 29 is vacant currently, so they do not have a representative. So I've already been working in that area and here as well. Just because I'm so excited.
Well, we're excited about it, and I'm going to tell you, you got somebody else who's a cheerleader as well as I am, and that's our mayor right here, Chuck Abels.
He's a nice fella.
And I was so excited when I found out you were going to gain this Geraldine, Alabama. And so I was talking with our mayor Abels, and I said, "You're not going to believe who's going to be like Geraldine." And he already knew about it.
Well, he did, because when the redistricting was passed, when I found out about the change, the first thing I did was get with the mayors in the new area and let them know about the change, and introduce myself to them and ask them what their goals and plans were and how I could help with that. So he did have an early heads up.
Yeah.
But I was thinking this morning driving over how ironic that just a chance meeting between you and I so many years ago at a Republican event and a former Republican governor, and fighting against the liberal climate agenda. Here we connected and met and became friends, and now look. I mean, it's just
and a regular segment she's going to be having on this. Well, you were kind of regular anyway on the show, but I'll tell you what I really loved about Ginny is you were fighting for these farmers, you know. And I'm a farmer. I mean, all my friends in Charlotte, North Carolina can't believe it, but anyway, yes, I'm a farmer, and I'm a beekeeper too. But you were fighting for these farmers right here in our area, not off somewhere else. You're fighting for us.
Well, my grandparents were farmers, and we're just regular folks, and that's what my campaign slogan started out as. For the people. I'm just a regular person, for the people, and so I just that's what I do is just work on constituent issues, work with my local city and town governments and counties to try to get things done to help the folks. And
well, this issue that came up, I had no clue about it, and then you just walked up to him and started talking about it and said you'd like to come on my show and talk about it. And I'm like, well, why? And then you were telling me about it, and I'm like, well, I didn't know all of this stuff. Of course I want you on the show.
Well, things like that tend to fly under the radar, until the people find out about it. And so we were successful and still fighting against liberal agendas on all fronts. So
well, you're fighting on some stuff right now.
Kind of leads us into what we were going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it, because and again, you're going to find that information here.
Well, people may not know what legislators do year round, because we're only in session about 3.5 months out of the year of a regular session. Now, last year we had 2 special sessions, and but we don't see one. We thought we might have one early fall, late summer, early fall, but looking like now things will just push on down to the next regular session at the beginning of the quadrennium after the new elected officials take place. We'll start in March. But during the off season, we continue to have meetings. I'll have for example, I'll be in Montgomery tomorrow for a joint transportation committee meeting, and I'll be meeting with attorneys with the legislative services, working on bills being drafted and prepared. We work on those all during the off season.
I mean, you're working all year round.
But we do work all year round, just on constituent issues. And like I said, I'm always working with my cities and towns and counties, furthering projects and applying for grants and those type of things, and also involved in the schools. One goal that I had, and this came from the DeKalb Republican women back in 2018, the legislature passed a law enabling schools, public buildings to display our national motto, which is "In God We Trust." And so you see it frequently, like on patrol cars. So this legislation was passed enabling that, and the DeKalb Republican women made it a project to have the posters framed and available for each classroom in the county. And so I was part of that and helping getting it in my schools in DeKalb, but I wanted to do it for my whole district. And so then things happened. The pandemic, we couldn't get the frames. They were, on a container off a ship off the coast of California somewhere. But now we can get the frames, and I have them all. So it's my goal before the district changes to get them even in the area that I'm losing. I made that commitment that I wanted them all in every classroom in my district. So I'm trying to finish that up. But working on legislation that's upcoming. But something that you and I had talked about was, even though we're not in session, the big news that coming out in politics has been the recent Supreme Court rulings that will affect the whole country and our state in particular on several different topics. Of course, the most prominent one was the Dobbs versus, I made some notes here so I could remember that.
And I'm going to move my coffee cup out of her way. I'd hate for something to get on that pretty dress.
I'll drink it. The Dobbs versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization. This came from Mississippi, where, of course, Roe versus Wade was the landmark Supreme Court decision that allowed abortion to take place, and the states were allowed to make certain restrictions, and that had been a point of viability, which is a moving target as medical discoveries are made, and just the technology and the different advancements that we have.
Thank God for the technology.
I know.
They bring everything out.
Back then, we didn't have ultrasound on a regular basis, but now we have like 4D ultrasound, and we can see in the womb and see that baby and know that is a living human being in there. And I think that's changed more people's opinions.
It has mine.
The technology.
I thought it was just a form of birth control.
That's what we were told. It's a clump of cells.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
Blah, blah, blah. But, we know, we can see. We don't have to rely.
We can see it sucking its thumb.
That's right. I mean, we can see, the development of the baby just in, like on a screen. It's just amazing. So Mississippi had passed some laws that was bumping down, their restrictions on abortion, that was challenged and made it all the way to the Supreme Court. And that's what the Supreme Court ruled, is that the states do have a right to restrict. So it bumps it back down to the states. It does not outlaw abortion across the country like people are saying.
You're putting out false info.
That's correct. That's not it. It's a states' rights issue, which bumps it down to each individual state. And Alabama is a pro-life state. We actually had an amendment that was voted on by the people, and I think that was in 2016. That's my Jeopardy answer on the date. That's the first thing that comes to my mind, which is usually correct, but it makes me wonder. that Alabama is a pro-life state, and we did pass some of the toughest pro-life legislation in 2019, and with the intentions of trying to make it to the Supreme Court to have our law challenged, which it was, but Mississippi just beat us to the court and getting that challenged, and it was overturned. And you know, as someone who has worked in the pro-life movement since the late 70s, early 80s, and trying to fight for pro-life legislation back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I'm a former crisis pregnancy counselor. And so to see the day come when, you know, the court overturned Roe through Dobbs and sends it back to the states, you know, it's kind of running through the victory tape, but yet we have so much work to do still.
I never thought we'd see this day.
You know,
I'll have to tell you, because the enemy's been at this for a very long time.
yes.
And for it to have, this is a lot of prayers answered right there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There came a point in time where, you know, in trying to get legislation passed, when there was a Democrat majority, our thoughts were, well, we have to change people's hearts and minds. And we did that. We did that, and technology did that. And then now we have a Republican supermajority in the state, and we were able to pass pro-life legislation. And thanks to Trump and his 3 Supreme Court appointees and a 6-3 conservative majority, we have these rulings that we're going to talk about today, with the most prominent one being this one and sending it back to the states. So it is a great day, but it's not the finish line. It's kind of another start off.
But we're heading in the right direction.
That's correct.
And I think I mean, think about, there could be a baby that could be ready to be born who could find the cure for cancer. Or, you know, and we want these babies to be born. And I want to tell you something I really love seeing is my friends who have they're either their grandkids or the mother, the baby's still in the womb, and they put those pictures out there. So I love seeing those. Keep sending them. I love them. They're so sweet.
Well,
I've even seen twins holding hands.
Yeah, it's amazing. It truly is amazing, you know, what we can see in the womb now. And, you know, I'll tell you, and people know, Republicans in particular get accused of being pro-birth and not caring about the baby and the mother after birth, but that's really not the case. There is so much help for women and girls who are facing an unplanned pregnancy. And one thing that it's actually a state law. There's a resource guide for pregnant females who, you know, who need help and need assistance if they're on their own, you know, trying to get through this. And there's a law that required clinics to give this information to visitors to the clinic, but it was not being done, and it was very outdated. But I worked with the Department of Public Health to update the information, and it's in every county. It's by county. It gives every resource available, and they are having it reviewed now by their attorneys. And even though currently elected abortion is against the law in Alabama, clinics are still in operation offering other services, whether it be birth control screenings or whatever, so they can still give this information, and I think it'll even be more relevant today. But I also told the public health office that this needed to be in every county health department and in crisis pregnancy centers to get this information to women to let them know that there is help out there and how to get it.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I've got a new hero, and the new hero is the woman who is pregnant, and for some it could be financial reasons, it could be any kind of reason. She goes on ahead and has that baby and gives it up for adoption. You're a hero in my eyes. You really are. Don't let anybody talk you down. If for some reason you just can't keep the baby, and you're willing to go ahead and go through 9 months of being pregnant and give that baby up for adoption, you're awesome.
Well, that brings us to that's what a great segue. You're good at this. Because adoption,
God's in it.
the adoption option, and I have a sister who is adopted, so it's very near and
My
dear.
daughter-in-law is. She's
How
from
about
Russia.
that?
Yeah.
So it's very near and dear and personal to me because of my family's experience, and I would not have a sister if her mother had not had her and placed her for adoption. So I'm very thankful for that. And this is a topic that has been being worked on behind the scenes. There's been a committee working through the Alabama Law Institute that has been revamping our adoption code. They've been working on this for 4 years. It's been very painstaking and tedious work, and these volunteers have been working. We meet every other week for 2.5 hours, and so I've been participating with this committee to get our adoption code up to date, and we are looking for ways to streamline adoption and make it easier and less costly. It is, cost prohibitive in a lot of cases, and so we're looking at how we can speed that up, because we've got over 6,000 children in foster care in the state, whether they be with foster homes or in NGOs and non-government organizations that house and feed and care for children in foster care. And the average time that a child spends in foster care is over 2 years. And that is a lifetime in a young child.
Well, they need stability and
they need permanency.
Yeah.
They need, and that's the goal. Of course, if it's a possibility of reuniting that child with their biological family, of course that's the number one goal. But it's to get a child into a permanent home as fast as possible, where they can have that stability and permanency. That's the goal.
Well, how long does it typically take? Let's say somebody wants to adopt a child and they find one. How long is the process right now?
Over a year.
Oh my goodness, that's over a year. That's just too long.
And frequently it takes longer than that.
Yeah.
So depending on the route, but that's something that we're looking at to see how that we can protect everyone's rights involved, to make sure that the safeguards are in place to protect the child, and make sure they're going to a good quality home, and that there's not any issues, and take care of all the legal matters. So it is kind of complicated. That's why it's taken so long, in looking at the code. But that committee has had all the stakeholders involved, from DHR to judges to attorneys, everybody at the table that has a part in the process, and to look at how we can make it all work better. So that's the goal, and I predict that legislation will be front and center when we convene in March. So
I hope so. So there's all kinds of bright little kids out there that need a permanent home, and there's lots of folks who want to adopt.
Absolutely, and so it's just making those connections, getting the people who want to adopt with the children, connected with the children who need a permanent home. And we were looking at last year, I carried some legislation last year to double the adoption tax credit to help financially with families who were adopting. And so we did pass that last year, but we're looking at some, as I described, some additional legislation that we hope to have ready. That's what I'll be meeting on tomorrow.
It's so expensive to adopt, and I'd like to see, I'm thinking of all the folks out there. You've got to have high gas prices and the food prices, food coming in, and so many factors that are built into that as well. But so it wouldn't be so expensive. I don't know what it costs now, but I know back in the day, someone told me about $30,000 about 20 years ago.
It depends on who you go through, whether it's a private adoption agency, or if it's trying to adopt a child that's been in your home with you, or a foster parent, or through private adoption and international adoption. It's actually probably easier to adopt internationally right now than it is inside the state.
Wow.
But just, the laws are complicated. We've got, state lines involved, and other states involved, and so it really is a complicated issue, and we're just trying to simplify that, and like I said, make sure everybody's rights are protected, and somebody doesn't have to be wealthy to provide a good home for a child. It's not just about the money. It's about having love in your heart, and being able to provide for a child, provide for their emotional and physical care. and to raise that child. So
And I
that's
appreciate
most
the
important.
fact too that you guys are making sure every I's dotted and every T's crossed, because and we know this from experiences watching things happen before, whether that's Montgomery or at the Capitol, that it's got to be done right from the get go, or are there's going to be snags?
Well,
It's going to delay it even further.
we do everything we can. Sometimes you don't find out about problems until it gets into practice.
And that's just regular life.
And so you try to think ahead. You try to think of everything that could possibly
what
come
ifs.
up. Yeah, of all the what ifs, and that's something I'm kind of good at. I don't know why, but I play devil's advocate a lot. Well, what if this happens? And what if this? And what if you have this situation? But even in that, you just can't possibly think of every possible thing that could happen. So we do have to come back and amend laws and tweak laws as we find out how in practice in real life things happen and come up. So.
And I do know a lot of parents, for instance, maybe they were in drugs and alcohol or whatever, and so the state or whoever took the kids away from them. But there are people who actually change their lives. I've seen it happen.
It does happen.
And then they want those kids back. That's what we'd rather happen, where those kids could be back with their parents again.
That's the number one goal, to restore families. And there are issues, whether it be drugs, crime, and people going through the court system. Those things take time. It takes, time for somebody to turn their life around. It doesn't happen very quickly. And so, but you have to come to, there's a point in time to where, the child is languishing and being bounced around. Kids get separated, siblings get separated. Things like that.
It's so within its own self right there.
It's really not a good situation. It's a tough situation on these children, and thankfully we have good foster homes that are willing to open their homes even on a temporary basis to provide for children.
That's more heroes for me right
absolutely.
There. Absolutely. Those folks who are foster parents, you're awesome. I'm going to tell you what, you're providing for those kids, and so loving, and I'm always proud to see that too.
We have just over 2,000 foster homes in the state, which is not a lot if you want to think about the entire state and the fact that we have over 6,000 children in care. So it's not a lot. We can always use more.
Could that process be easier?
Honestly, I have not looked at that, but sure. I mean, we can always look at things and say, how can we do this better?
Well, times change. Think about the process of how we did things 20 years ago is not the same as we do things now. And sometimes that can cause a problem there, or an issue or a stumbling block to make things happen a little bit faster.
Sure. But it will be a topic front and center when we reconvene, I do believe. So.
Now, what's next?
Well, some other Supreme Court rulings. There was the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, and this is relevant to Alabama because it regards concealed carry permits. New York State, like some other states, Maryland, California, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Massachusetts, require citizens to prove they have a need for personal protection to get a concealed carry permit to carry out from their home.
However, a killer doesn't, they'll just go by wherever, whatever.
They don't get the permit.
They don't get that.
So that was challenged, and the Supreme Court ruled that it is not necessary to prove a need for personal protection. So that now Alabama's law has changed. It's not in effect yet, so I'll explain that we currently require a pistol permit to conceal carry. We have open carry where citizens can carry that can be seen, on their person, just walking down the street. You do not have to have a permit for that, but to be concealed in a pocket, inside a jacket, inside a vehicle, then a concealed permit is currently required. But we did pass a law not to eliminate permits altogether, but to make it optional, going from the permit system being required, where we've gone to the prohibited persons database. So this the prohibited persons database law was passed the prior year, And Aaliyah is responsible for setting up this database and collecting the information from all the reportable agencies. And so, unless somebody is prohibited by law, like a convicted felon, someone who's used a weapon to commit a felony, domestic violence, that kind of thing, who would be on this prohibited persons list, then there will be that list instead of who has been proven to be able to conceal carry. But it does not go into effect until January 1st. So the law is still currently as it is until the end of the year, to give Aaliyah time to get this database up and running. And then come January 1st, a pistol permit from the sheriff's office is not required to conceal carry. But you can still get one. They'll still be available. And because some states still require them, and if somebody travels across state lines with a state who reciprocates and recognizes our permit, we'll still need one to travel to those states.
Because there's different laws right there. You go through another state, it's going to be different than our law.
And my husband's the sheriff, but I'm always going to get a concealed carry permit if he'll give me one. So.
He could give you a hard time if he wanted to. He said, no, not you.
If somebody, passes the background check and doesn't have any of these things that would put them on the prohibited persons list, then, they'll get the permit. But also because I know in DeKalb County, Sheriff Weldon uses those funds to support school resource officers, and my husband does as well in Cherokee County. Those funds from the pistol permits funds our school resource officers. So I'll do it just because of that, just because I want to help them out. I want to have school resource officers in our schools, and so I
do too. I do too.
Plus, how this is actually going to play out, this may come down to one of those areas where the law is going to need tweaking, because it'll make traffic stops a little more lengthy whenever, because an officer has the authority to ask if someone has a weapon on them, and so they're we're required to tell them if we do or not. And so if the officer then wants to check and make sure that the person is not on the prohibited persons database, then it's just like running somebody through that database, just like they do to see if there's any outstanding warrants on anybody. So it may take a little longer, in a traffic stop. And so, but if I've got my pistol permit, I can say, yes, I do. I have a weapon in my purse, and then here's my pistol permit, just so you know that I'm not on the...
really, the more you throw out there and say, yeah, right here it is, I mean, the less time it's going to take, I think. Because if you're actually trying to hide something, that's going to, that's going to be suspicious. But I wanted to say this about open carry. I'm all for it, and it doesn't freak me out when I see someone carrying it does not at all. The only reason I don't do open carry is if a shooter's going to come in, they're going to get you first. I mean, if you're open carry, I would think. I don't know. So, but yeah, I carry.
I don't carry it where it can be seen, but I do carry.
Yeah.
And we've seen in the news recently where the bad guy with a gun was stopped by a good guy with a gun.
A good one.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, and I saw something recently that made the correlation between a rock, that in the Bible where, a rock was used to murder somebody in a bad way, but then David slew Goliath with a rock. So it's not the rock, it's the person.
No,
it's not the gun, it's the person.
You're going to love this.
So,
do you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
Used to. I'm sure I've seen them all.
Well, the good ones are the older ones.
Yes.
So this was one I saw. It was a rerun back in the 50s, and this woman had murdered her husband with a rack of ribs or something. I forgot what it was. And they were trying, but they didn't have the evidence. They knew she did it, but they just didn't have evidence. It wasn't a gun, okay? And so what happened, she had invited the police over, and she had put it back into the freezer. So she invited the investigators and the sheriff and everybody over to her house. This is you got to look it up. It's a funny one, almost. And so as she's serving them, she's thinking in her mind, they're eating the evidence.
Because you'd hit them with a rack of ribs.
Anything could be a weapon.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, I think it's one of those classic ones. Now, you're working on a few other things, too. We're going to go into a commercial break. Let's go ahead and do that now, because because I know you want some smooth sailing, and I'm going to mess you up if we don't.
That's okay.
So everybody just hang around. We're going to go into a commercial break, and we are going to be right back with you in just a few minutes. So y'all hang in there. Good afternoon, everybody. We are back. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Afternoon Drive Home on IC Radio. In the town of Geraldine, Alabama, we're your source for news and entertainment. You can also find us on television. Two places. You can find us on locally, channel 182 on Charter Communications. Worldwide, we're on Abundant TV, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. You know what? You folks in other parts of the country are going to be jealous about our representative that we've got in our area. She is a worker. I'm going to tell you what, she really works for the folks in our area, and we appreciate you doing that.
Well, I enjoy what I do.
Well, I can tell. I really can. You're very genuine, and you don't see that a lot. So, but anyway, thank you for everything that you do. And for going to bat for us. There are so many things you've been going to bat for. Let's talk about this coach, by the way.
Yes, this is something that, right here in the South, we appreciate prayer and before and after football games and things like that. And there's been so many court rulings prohibiting people from being able to pray. We have student-led prayer in Alabama that had been upheld by the courts. But there was a coach who just on his own did not require anybody on the team or even invite them. He just on his own would kneel and pray after a football game. And he was fired from his job because of that. The school system, it was the case was Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. And he lost his job just because he simply chose to pray after a football game. And his teammates players had joined him on their own free volition.
No, he didn't say,
They
"Come,
were
we're
not
doing
coerced,
this."
shown any favoritism, for praying or not praying. No punishment or anything like that. But he lived in a very liberal state, and he lost his job, and it was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled. This is again thankful for the 6-3 conservative ruling by our Trump appointed justices that ruled that he was exercising his free speech and freedom of religion rights and praying on the football field after a game. And so I don't know, this coach has left the state, and I don't know if he's going to be offered his job back or a job back or what he'll do. It'll be interesting to see. But the Supreme Court has ruled that was protected speech. And so that is huge and very welcome, and I'm thankful for that one.
I'm not so sure that it's other people, other religious folks, who are actually causing all this division. Because, and I'm going to tell you this, I used to have a business in the Quintard Mall. And so there was a guy who was a Muslim, and he was right by me. He never harassed me. As a matter of fact, what he would do, he would go and pray to Allah in his particular manner. He would do, if there would be something, I would have to go, and maybe he would be praying in the hallway in the back of the store. And so I would be really quiet, not that I believe in it.
Just to respect his, and he was praying.
So I would just open the door and tiptoe out, and then go get the product I needed, tiptoe back in, and not to bother him. And then on the other hand, what he would do was come to me at Christmas and say, "Merry Christmas to you."
But see, that's what freedom of religion is all about in this country. The whole point of separation of church and state is that the government does not require participation. We're free to participate or not in any religion we choose, whether it's Christian, Muslim, or whatever. That's the point of freedom of religion and separation of church and state. Freedom of religion, not from religion, which I think the liberals
don't get us started on that.
Yeah, so that's.
But the reason I did it is because I thought if he ever decided he wanted to be a Christian or at least question it, he would remember I was nice to him. It wasn't rude and obnoxious.
Well, you were just being respectful, and that's what we should do, And I respect people who disagree with me about religion or anything else, But
it's okay to disagree. I mean, it's really okay. One of my granddads was a Democrat, my other granddad was a Republican, and I remember seeing them on the front porch. We bought the old farmhouse, but I remember seeing them on the front porch talking about it. Nobody got in a fight. I mean, they were just, my Republican granddad would say, "Mr. Shears, what do you think about so-and-so going on?" And then my other granddad, they called each other Mr. Shears and Mr. Beard.
Yeah.
Even though we're about the same age.
But that's respect. That was showing respect.
And nobody got mad. And so you got to think about this. The enemy trying to make us mad, okay? And I've had folks get on my Facebook page and say, well, try to start something with me. And I just say, look, I love you, and I'm not going to let this happen.
That's right.
We're not going to be divided.
Well, a lot gets stirred up on Facebook, and I'll say this. I have a neighbor who's a dear, dear friend, and he is a big liberal, and of course I'm a big conservative. And so
that gets interesting.
There came a point in time where I said, look, man, I love you, and we're neighbors and friends, and I don't think we're going to change each other's.
No.
I've never seen anybody on Facebook say, oh, you changed my mind.
Nobody ever does.
I've just never seen that happen. So I just said, let's just not, discuss it anymore, and just remain. And, I have a very diverse group of friends and of all persuasions, and I don't require, for somebody to be my friend that they look like me, believe like me, think like me.
I don't either. It's not necessary.
I love all my friends of all different types, and I think we can disagree and have respect and show respect, and
yeah.
That's
and I'm more likely to listen to you if you're not going to
exactly. We
otherwise I'll turn a deaf ear.
And we can talk and we can learn from each other, and without being disrespectful.
Yeah. Absolutely, we can, and I appreciate that about you. Absolutely. Now, what else are you working on?
Well, if you want to continue the discussion about the Supreme Court rulings, there's been some related to COVID and masking. There was
Oh,
the,
that's always hot.
yes, because cases are kicking up again, and some folks are in some states are enacting mask requirements and such again. And there were two rulings by the Supreme Court. One, the National Federation of Independent Business versus the Department of Labor.
Okay.
The Department of Labor was enforcing requirements on large businesses that masking would be required for employees, and the Supreme Court ruled that the Department of Labor cannot do that. That was an overreach, and that on a national level that they did not have that authority. So there was that ruling against masking. Now, in another case, Biden versus Missouri, the court ruled that masks could be required in healthcare facilities for those employees who were in healthcare facilities that received Medicare and Medicaid funding. So one against the masking, and then one that allowed the masking. So there were those two issues, and I do not see us revisiting masking in the state of Alabama. I just don't see it happening based on Governor Ivey's recent comments. I don't see that happening. I mean, the health officer can say whatever he wants. He's not a government employee, and he can say whatever he wants. But
well, opinions are okay. Go for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just telling my personal thing, and this is way before COVID hit, so y'all won't start with me about this. And I can't wear a mask. I have asthma. And so we're in my workshop, and you see a mask right there. Phil has bought masks for me, and those masks were bought long before COVID hit, and I can't wear it. So when I'm running my machinery and I'm working with metals and stuff like that, I have to hope I'm not breathing that stuff in.
It's difficult. I mean, if somebody chooses to wear a mask,
go for it. I
yes,
don't care.
That's their freedom to do so.
But it's my freedom not to smother to death in one, and I just can't do it. I'll pass out.
Well, those are the two Supreme Court rulings. The last one that I jotted down about, because it concerned religious freedom, it was about, this was, I believe, in Boston. It was Carson versus Macon, and it was where a religious organization was told by the city council that they could not participate in a flag raising, and on public property.
We're in America.
And so, but the Supreme Court said, oh yes, they can. So another ruling for religious freedom in the country. So I'm very proud of our Supreme Court and the rulings that they've churned out this term, upholding our freedoms and reaffirming our freedoms. So, and like we discussed, it's thankfully due to the conservative justices that President Trump appointed, and so that was one of the big reasons that I supported Trump. And I know a lot of people don't like him, but I guess it's
sorry, but I love him.
Well,
he's awesome.
He's
a businessman.
He's a businessman, and he is a brash, obnoxious New Yorker. But it was his policies. I can overlook personality if I believe in their policies.
She laughs at me every time I say this. I actually liked his personality.
I thought he was hilarious. I mean,
I'd laugh at some of the stuff he would do. I thought it was funny.
But somebody who's authentic and genuine. I mean, he is what you saw is what he is.
That's what I like. That's why I voted for you, because I like people who are. I mean, what you see is what you get.
That's it. So, but those are the big rulings that have come down that will affect us in our state and states across the country.
I think some awesome things. We've got about 14 minutes left in this segment. I want people to know the real you, okay? Because all they see is what you do in Montgomery. You're plowing at it, you're working at it, you're saying, what's wrong with everybody? Let's fix these problems. That's how you are. But now you got some hobbies. I mean, she's a fisher person.
I like to fish. I like to shoot guns.
I don't know that I want to compete with you in anything.
I'm very competitive.
and I am too, but not you. I got a feeling you'd win.
I'm very competitive. But I like to shoot and clays and love my shotgun. I've got and do
Let's
all
talk
kinds
about gun
of things.
safety for a minute,
Okay.
because this is what I get every time we talk about guns on the show. Several people usually will send stuff like, "I'm okay with guns. I just don't want one. I'm afraid of them." How can you
Well,
get over that fear?
knowledge, education to take away that fear. We need to have a healthy fear and respect for firearms, but to know how they work and how to be safe. And I know the sheriff's offices in DeKalb and in Cherokee County, surrounding counties, offer gun safety programs, which is really beneficial, especially for someone who's new to firearms. But it doesn't hurt. I mean, even if you've been around guns your whole life, like I have, you know, it's good to know proper gun safety and care and how to shoot and how to be safe, because accidents do happen. Even with seasoned gun handlers, accidents happen. So you just have to be safe and have a healthy respect. So I think just education and knowledge can take away an unhealthy fear and turn it into a respect.
Well, see, we were like you. We grew up. My dad had guns in the bedroom. He had a revolver in his chest of drawers, you know. But we just knew not to touch them,
Right.
you know. So, but now that's how we were raised. It's not a toy. You don't play with it. Now we had toy guns, you know, and that kind of thing, but not a real thing.
Little cap guns. I can smell them now.
rifle.
Did you really? And you didn't shoot your eye.
No, I didn't. I still got both of them right now. But just being healthy about it. But if you raise your kids to be afraid of them, you know, I think that's part of the agenda too. You know, from the left, where you teach your kids to be afraid of them, they'll never want one.
With my husband being in law enforcement, of course, and I have two sons and a daughter, and they grew up in the house. Now we kept our guns locked and safe, and not, you know, where the kids could get a hold of them accidentally. But just still, we taught them proper gun safety. And I'll share a little brief story with you. We were visiting with a friend of ours in her home, and she had a bird in her bedroom, and she told the kids that they could go into her bedroom to see her bird. And so the adults were still in the living room, and our older son, who was about 5 at the time, and so the other 2 kids were younger, you know, than that. But he kept coming back to the living room and interrupting, and I was getting onto him. He was interrupting the adults talking, and I kept saying,
like a mother
"You're
should
not
be.
supposed to interrupt. We're talking here." And so finally, like the third time he came out, he said, "I know I'm going to get in trouble, but I'm trying to tell you that there's a gun on the bedside beside the bed, and we're kids in there." You know? And so he, you know, he was.
That's the healthy respect that he was taught.
Yeah, he was letting me know, hey, there's a gun, because we were in somebody's home, and you just kind of don't think about that, you know, that you may make your home safe, but wherever you go,
other people may not.
You know, and your kids may spend the night in another house, you know, where, so they need to know what to do. And he knew not to touch it and to tell an adult. And so that's what he was trying to do and got in trouble for. But we did, you know, he did not get in trouble for interrupting. You know, we told him he did the right thing, and she was just mortified because, you know, she said, I never thought, you know, I don't have children, so I,
that's right,
you know, didn't think about having the gun beside the bed there. So, but yeah, we need to practice gun safety and teach gun safety.
There's a guy I want to introduce you to. He's in Huntsville. He's an attorney. His name is Greg Hopkins. You may already know him. And he's written a book, and he also teaches gun safety classes. And he's been on the show several times. He's been sick, so he hasn't been on the show in probably over a year. And, oh, by the way, he was the very first contestant on Jeopardy.
Oh, wow.
He's a brainiac. Like,
oh, my goodness.
So I always love having
what
him
year
on the show.
Was
and
that?
He won. It was, what was it, in the 70s or the 80s or something? I don't remember when it was, but you can find him. I posted on my Facebook page about 5 years ago, and he said, I was the very first person on Jeopardy. And
wow.
I said, no way. And he said, wait. And so he sends this video, and it's actually out there. You can find it. Greg Hopkins, first contestant on Jeopardy. And he won the first one. But I won't tell you about the second one or the third one. Well, I guess I kind of gave you a hint about the second one, didn't I? Because I said a second and a third one. So that kind of gave you a hint. But anyway, he's a brainiac. But he's written a book, and it's on law, okay, and guns and how you handle guns. And so one of the first questions I asked him when he was on the show, I said, I've always heard if somebody is trying to break into your home and and you shoot them, make sure they don't fall outside the window. They need to be inside the window. He said, no. They said, that's not the true law.
No, it's not.
And then he was also talking about crossing the border. I mean, you cross over, say, from Alabama into Georgia or into Tennessee or whatever. They're going to have different laws there, and you really need to know those. Can you open carry in particular states? Can you not? And so he's just chock full of information. We're going to get him back on the show, but I'm going to introduce you to.
What?
Y'all would
I need to meet.
Y'all would be dear friends. I'm going to take this. Me and this guy are just like buddies. And his name's Greg Hopkins. Look him up. Go to youtube.com. Greg Hopkins. First contestant on Jeopardy.
Wow. Cool.
But anyway, he's chock full of info about that as well. Time flies with me and you. Okay, we still got a little time. We still got about 6 minutes left in this segment. But gun safety, and I wanted to say this. So Phil buys I'd already had a gun. Phil wanted to buy me a gun. I think it was for Christmas. And so he's getting these like big, huge ones I couldn't even get my hand around. You know what I mean? So what do you suggest for husbands who are thinking about buying a gun for their wife? Should the wife be present when they're looking for a gun? Is that right, Phil?
Yes. I mean, because you need to get one that you can handle and to fit your hand. And I really like a 9mm. But there's a little, but I have very long fingers and I can handle, regular size. But there's a mini.
That's the
9mm, But yeah,
I like
revolvers too. Oh yeah, they're cool. Yeah, they're a little smaller, a little lighter weight. But yeah, guns come in all shapes and sizes, and so you need to be able to handle it and know how to use it, because if you can't, that's going to be an impediment.
Right. I mean, it could wind up like.
Right, and you never take one out unless you intend to use it, and you don't want it taken away from you and used against you. So you need to think about it.
Well, I have one that's ready in the barrel. If I need to use it. But again, the gun safety, that's another thing. A lot of people, you've got to know the gun. You got to know the parts.
And I don't do that. But if even in the dark, if somebody hears, they know what's about to happen when they hear you ratcheting and get one in the chamber.
Thought about that.
They know what's going to happen.
My friend Rick Staines is a security specialist. And so he mentioned that. He's been on the show for years as well. And so he always says, sometimes just simply having it can deter some people if they have enough sense. He said, or now if it's somebody on drugs or whatever, they may not make the connection, that you have a gun at them. But and then, what's the sheriff's name? He was in Calhoun County. Can't remember what his name was. But anyway, he used to come on my show.
Larry Emerson is the former sheriff. Matthew Wade is the current sheriff.
Larry Emerson.
Yes.
Okay, so I introduced him one time at a meeting, and it was the Morning Rotary Club, and I was a member of the Morning Rotary Club in Anniston. I was like only me and another woman, so we were like everybody's sister, at the club. And so they said it was my turn to invite somebody, so I invited Larry Emerson. And so he started talking about a couple of things. And first of all was gun safety. Don't let your husband choose the gun. You be there with him and that kind of thing. But another was about drugs. And so he made a point that was very, very important. And this is in Calhoun County. And I think he passed away, didn't he?
He did. He passed from cancer.
Well, I really loved him.
It's a very nice man. He really, really was. Very good sheriff. Very helpful.
Well, he was talking about meth. And so he was talking about meth. He said, it's back before it really became big, big, big. This was in like 1990 or something, like 1995, something like that. And so he was talking about, made a really good point. He said, what your kids don't understand, if they start getting into meth, then it's almost like a bouncing basketball. He said, how you'll bounce it, and the first time it goes really high, well, they're going to get that initial real high. And then he said, then if you don't bounce it anymore, it's still just, not be as high, bouncing up off of the ground. And that's what these kids, that's why they're dying of it, because they're trying to get that initial high.
And it takes more and more.
Yeah, more and more and more of it, So, and we've had a drug problem here, for a real long time.
Well, we're always going to have a drug problem. It just like you pointed out, back then the drug of the day was meth, and now we have such an issue with fentanyl, which is also a border issue. Because the drug is going to change. Back in the 70s, it was cocaine, and Quaaludes and pills and things. The drugs change, but we're always going to be fighting the drug problem.
Well, I didn't know this until in the Korean War. do you know that LSD was going on
Absolutely, yeah.
You just think, oh, just the 60s and the 70s. No, it's been going on for a long time.
No, it really has. And one of the one of the Supreme Court rulings we didn't talk about is related to the drug issue in a way, because it was reversing the Supreme Court upheld Biden's ability to reverse the Trump policy of immigrants remaining in Mexico until their court date. And so the Supreme Court ruled that it was an executive privilege, that there could be an order to allow people to be in the United States, and that's what's happening. And our even though Mayorkas says that our border is secure, it is not. It is wide open. We've got the drug cartels in Mexico who are in charge of our border, and all these people, and 900,000 they're saying in the past year, getaways that we don't know where they are, don't know who they are, and they're just in our country. And it's a national security issue. It's a drug issue because drugs are coming across the border, a human trafficking issue. It's a national security issue. But fentanyl has to be one of the most dangerous drugs that we've ever had to face, and it's coming from China through our Mexican border, where just such a small amount can kill someone. And it's being found in laced any kind of illegal drug that kids and people acquire, like online, just on the street. It's a danger of just one time of taking a drug that with fentanyl in it can kill, and does kill. And it's a bigger epidemic than the pandemic. And it's such a serious issue. So we will always be fighting some drug war, and it's not just internal. I believe that this is a national security issue. The drug war is actually international, from our enemies attacking us by
within.
Yes, they're flooding us with these illegal drugs that kill to defeat us. It's my personal opinion.
It's my opinion too.
It's my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
So. We always will be fighting some type of drug, always.
Ginny Schaefer with us. We're going to have to go into a commercial break. Ginny, tell the folks how they can get in contact with you. It's an open plan right here. You can talk to folks, and folks, whatever you've got, questions or whatever, you can always get in contact with.
Sure, if people call my office number, 334-261-0413. I'm not in Montgomery all the time right now, but I have those calls forwarded to my cell phone. So if you call that number, 334-261-0413, it'll ring into my cell phone. People can find me on Facebook. I think I have tapped out at my 5,000 friends. I'm going to have to try
to do some house cleaning.
But I can't do it within 6 months of an election, so I'll have to wait until November. But you can go in and send me a friend request, and then if somebody gets mad at me and defriends me and opens up a space, I'll add you on. But I'm going to have to come up with a new profile to be able to reach out, to have room for all my new folks. But thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for being a servant of the people.
With you.
I always love being with you too.